Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. Today I wanted to give a response video, or basically a take on a video from Steve Shives that basically was entitled How Star Trek TOS Missed the Mark When Talking About Racism. Now in his video he referenced three particular episodes from Star Trek the original series. I believe they were the Savage Curtain, Balance of Terror, and one of my favorite episodes, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Now, again, first off the bat, I'm not doing this video to put any shade on Steve Shives. Again, he's another one of those content creators that talks about Star Trek, whose videos I really find entertaining and get a kick out of. But I felt that in this particular video that he did, it was warranted that I kind of do a response video, or I should say a different take on his perspective when it came to those three episodes. Now, a couple of days ago, I put out a video letting you guys know I'm going to be doing this. So hopefully you guys got the opportunity to at least check out Let That Be Your Last Battlefield from Star Trek TOS. If you guys have not, please stop the video and go take a look. Or if you don't mind spoilers or anything like that, which this video will have, then yeah, take a look at this video and then go take a look at the episode and see what you thought. So let's start with his take on a couple of events in episode The Savage Curtain. Now, in a real quick synopsis of that episode, Kirk and Enterprise is flying through space and they get a hail basically, hey, it's Abraham Lincoln. He's floating out in space, man. Yeah, I want to come aboard basically, and all this stuff kick off. Now, as the episode progresses, we come to find out that these particular rock aliens didn't understand the concept of good and evil. So they probed the Enterprise's crew's brains for their concepts of what they considered good and evil, made those particular things avatars, or those heroes of those people's avatars, and pit them against each other. Now, that's very important because remember what I said was these aliens probed the mind of the crew of the Enterprise and made these facsimiles based on the crew's visions of them. Now, one of the things that Steve Shive references in his video is that when Abraham Lincoln came aboard the Enterprise and he first seen Lieutenant Uhura, he referred to her as a Negress. And his take on that was, well, she didn't show any sign of offense or anything like that. She didn't get upset. She didn't try to correct him. As a matter of fact, she told him, hey, it was okay. That basically people of her time words don't basically hurt them anymore. They don't get this, they don't have the same impact. And so Lincoln went on to apologize. He says basically, hey, of this, I meant no offense, in which case that was a very good thing for him to have said. And that's something that Steve Shives references. Now, what Steve Shives doesn't get, right, is that that wasn't the real Abraham Lincoln, okay? So the interpretation or calling or referring to Uhura as a negress, right, was just symptomatic wording of that time. Okay, so that would, and Uhura didn't get upset with it for one, because Uhura is a linguist. She's a communicator, right? Do you know all the words that Uhura come across? That being said, the only power that words carry over us is the power that we allow to carry over us. I would think that everybody aboard aboard Kirk's crew, and Uhura being one of the senior bridge staff, right, is meant to have enough emotional and mental fortitude, which they've been shown to have, to be able to not find something like that to be offensive. That being said, this Abraham Lincoln is a facsimile of what Kirk believes Abraham Lincoln would be. So to Kirk, this Abraham Lincoln would be apologetic for calling her a negress, all right? And she wouldn't get any madder than if somebody walked up to me and called me a scallywag or, a peasant. I'd be like, oh, whatever, dude, whatever, right? So, I just wanted to touch on that because that was a great interaction. They were showing that, hey, although you may be accustomed to using this kind of language, this kind of verbiage, you may have been brought up, it may have been your environment, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's something that is not offensive to the person who's hearing it. And on the flip side of that, the person who's hearing it can use that as a teaching moment to, show the adult and, advanced side of themselves and be like, hey, that's okay. I understand that you are just ignorant in this. It doesn't offend me. Let's move on. Now, the next episode that he referenced is the episode Balance of Terror. Now, in the episode Balance of Terror, everybody should be very familiar with. It's the first time we get to see Romulans put to screen, and the actor playing the Romulan commander was, of course, Leonard, the great Leonard Nimoy, not Leonard Nimoy, Mark Leonard, all right? And Mark Leonard would go on to play Spock's father. Now, in that episode, we find out that Vulcans and Romulans are basically look the same because they originate from the same planet. Now they have the same history. Now in the episode we find out that Lieutenant Styles, who is the navigator, he basically has his family has history with the Romulans because of the Romulan War. He has family that fought and died in that war, so he has problems with the Romulans. Now when he sees that the Romulans look just like Spock and Spock looks like the Romulans, he proceeds through the rest of the episode to feel a certain kind of way abrasively about Spock. Now, in Steve Shaw's video, he basically talked about, that was something that happened a long time ago. How would you be mad? And this is an argument that kind of really upsets me because, well, I ain't gonna say upsets me. It kind of makes me wonder what is being taught and what stories are being told in certain households. Because the thing is, just like Styles, Styles' grandparent, great grandparent may still be alive. When he was a kid, he probably interacted with these people, talked to these people, heard their stories and experiences of that war. So it's very personal to him. To him, it wasn't something that happened many, many years ago in some kind of black and white footage, all right? And that's the same thing when it comes to us. In our households, we talk to our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and for some of us who are lucky enough, our great-grandparents, all right? Great-great-grandparents. Well, it's a long line of us, all right? And we all tell stories of when they were kids, their experiences, things that people would now consider woke, well, let's not even get into that. But so the prejudices that my father and my mom and my grandparents went through, I am keenly aware of and aware of their experience, and I am empathetic and sympathetic, right, to how that hurt them, right? So Steve not understanding how Styles may have felt in that situation, seeing, hey, yo, my first officer, yo, we got problems, dude. And I think that Kirk correcting it the way that he did was awesome because one, that not only shows the command style of Kirk, right, but lets you know that, hey, we don't, just like Kirk said, we don't tolerate that here. All right. And Kirk was basically saying that to everybody who's watching that episode. We don't tolerate that kind of bigotry here. All right. So let's move on. Let that be your last battlefield. Now, he had a lot to say about this episode. So let me give you a quick synopsis about this episode. Basically, the Enterprise rose up on a stolen stolen Starfleet shuttlecraft, right? And they find this dude named Lokai on board, right? So they take him on board like, yo, dude, you stole the shuttlecraft. We got to head to Starbase so we could, have you stand trial, you get some law in your system. Anyway, this other ship ends up rolling up on a man, and before self-destructing, this dude comes on board the ship named Bill. Now, the thing about Lokai and Bill is one is black on one side, white on the other. Now, this episode, they proceed to try to convince Kirk and crew that, whose side they should support, if they should support Bill, and let Bill take Lokai back to Sharon, which is their planet, to stand trial for all the atrocities that Bill said that Lokai did, or let Lokai go free and seek asylum from Bill and just go back to the Federation and seek, punishment for stealing the shuttlecraft. So that's basically this episode in a nutshell. Now, let me just go right on the back. I need you guys, when you think of this episode, to not think of the main characters that are portrayed in this story as individuals. Because if you portray them as individuals, you lose not only the point of the story, right? But it's so much that's unanswered to you. And I'm going to get into why Steve Shives didn't understand some of the things that happened in that episode. So let's go over the main characters and we'll talk about what they represent. Okay, they're not individuals. It is what they represent. So Bill represents a system. Okay, and that system is racism. Okay, that's what Bill represents. Lokai represents the slaves, the oppressed, the marginalized, right? That's what the castaways, the terrorized. That's what Lokai represents. Okay. Kirk in this episode represents the neutral observer, the neutral participant. Okay, one that doesn't, one that's not a zealot, on the side of Bill, and one that's not a zealot on the side of Lokai. All right, and I'm gonna get to the separations of those in a minute. Okay, so Kirk, Spock, they represent the neutral aspects of it. Spock actually represents more of the logical outside observation of the situation. Okay. Now, if you think of it that way, let's talk about the episode. All right. So you got this neutral party, man. They flying out through space, man. They don't know anything about what's going on. Okay. They come across a situation where some people who say they are oppressed and kind of find out Lokai used the word we needed. I didn't steal it. I needed this. Okay. Now, it's a very big distinction. So the neutral party rolls across a situation where they see somebody that we don't know this dude, but he stole our shuttlecraft. He has to answer to the law. Why? Because the law is orderly. We put this thing in place. Justice is blind. It don't care about your skin color and none of that, right? That's what he's the neutral party. That's what Kirk believes. That's what Kirk and crew believes because that's what they were taught. All right. So they're gonna Lokai broke the law, right? Whether he needed it or whether he wanted it or whether he stole it, all of that is irrelevant, right? Because he broke the law. He needs to go answer for that. That's the only thing we're concerned about. All right. Now, so Lokai, the system of oppression, comes on board the ship. Okay. The system of oppression starts asking for your help, starts to try to make itself known. All right. Tries to publicize its oppression to anyone who would listen. All right. Think of back in the day during the peaceful protests and marches. Do you think they was marching just because they had nothing else to do? No, it was for attention so that people can notice them. They can bring attention to their oppression. All right. So that was what was going on. So Lokai comes aboard and he's trying to bring attention to his plight. Hey, y'all, listen, neutral party, you guys can help me. You guys can help me get the word out. Y'all can help me get away from, my oppressor, all this whole system and everything. But what's right close behind them? What's always right close behind the person, right? What's always close behind the oppressed trying to re-oppress them, right? The system of racism. Here comes Bill, right? Here comes Bill, all classy, arrogant, he's all, regal, right? He portrays, he portrays the aura of being able to, consort with the people that's neutral. He doesn't consider himself primitive, a savage, or anything like that, right? He's proper, right? So now Bill decides to come on board and be like, yo, what's up, y'all? I came to get Lokai because, he killed a whole lot of people, man. He started naming off all this stuff that Lokai did, and Kirk and I'm like, yeah, we don't know nothing about none of that. What we do know is he stole the shuttlecraft, man. He got to go answer for that. Now, Bill don't particularly like that. So Bill says, hey, well, I'm going to use my powers to take over your ship, right, with my will. And I'm going to make it go where I want it to go, and ain't nothing you can do about it. Now, think about that for a second. Because why didn't Lokai do that? Lokai doesn't seem to have had that power to just make other systems do its bidding just off his will, right? So right off the bat, we got a separation between what each of them could do. So Bill decides, hey, I'm going to use my power, right? I'm going to use my will to make this do as I want it to do. Forget your laws, forget what you didn't put down, forget how you was trying to do things, forget how logically you was trying to talk to me, forget your beliefs. It is my will that's going to control all of this, right? That's how powerful that particular system is. Now, all wrapped up in this, right? Lokai is like, yo, y'all got to do something about this. Now, what did they decide to do about that? You notice that nothing that they used was effective against Lokai or Bill. Energy weapons wasn't effective. They couldn't damage them, couldn't touch them, nothing, right? Think of how powerful those systems are, right? The system of trying to be free, right? And the system of people, of those trying to stop people from trying to be free. Both of those are super powerful systems. Historically, that's all that has motivated the oppressed to just be free, to just get away from the racist system, right? To, to identify where the racist system is so that they won't be there, to identify where the racist system has its power so they could try not to be affected by it, right? Those people refer to that as woke, just so you guys know. We needed to be aware of where that system was hovering so that they couldn't be affected or try not to be affected as much as they possibly could. Now, weapons don't work on it, right? You can't, make somebody stop being racist. Hey, guns never work. Fire hoses don't, stop nothing. Dogs don't stop anything. None of that stuff. Laws, all of that. In the end, freedom is all. People who are oppressed gonna always seek a way to be free, and people who are oppressing them is always gonna try to find a way to re-oppress them or keep oppressing them. All right. So Kirk decides, all right, check this out. You guys want to play like that? I'm gonna blow up the ship. So it's the first time we hear Kirk use the self-destruct, the auto-destruct sequence, right? Which he'll later mirror in the Wrath of Khan. But so, Bill like, all right, check this out. All right, I say I'm gonna have to go another approach because you guys not really wanting to bend in my wheel the way I want y'all to do. So I'm gonna try to have to go in through the back door. I'm gonna have to try to be sly. Now, think about what happens. Who does Bill talk to and who does Lokai talk to when it comes to the crew? Think about how the writers decide to write that. Bill decides to talk to Kirk, the neutral party, Spock, the logical party. All right. He is talking to the neutral party because he feels that it is easier to turn the neutral party to his side, to get them to sympathize, right? To get them to see, to get Kirk to see enough of his viewpoints, right? To where he could start leaning them, leaning them, leaning them, leaning them, leaning them, leaning them. Then the next thing you know, you're MAGA. No, stop. Anyway, and just keep leaning them, right? What does Lokai do? Who does Lokai decide to talk to? He decides to talk to Sulu and Chekhov, right? Think of that. The Russian and the Japanese. Who on the ship, besides those two and Uhura, would know anything about Lokai's oppression, be able to relate in any way to him? Who would be able to sympathize with Lokai enough to gain support to change the neutral party's mind in favor of freedom and support of freedom? All right. So that was very interesting that they decide to have those particular those systems talk to each other that way. Now, what ends up happening? What ends up happening? Spock, being a logical party, is like, hey, listen, all this is crazy. We don't know that what you're talking about is something that really happened. What we do know again is they stole the shuttlecraft, and Kirk is basically like, hey, listen, we don't believe him and we don't necessarily believe you either. Neither one of y'all gonna really change our mind because we believe in the law. We believe that the law is gonna sort it out, right? That, due process, that's what we believe in, all right? And that's what's gonna save the day. But does it? Does the system of law save the day? No. Why? Because Lokai and Bill end up trying to fight each other and run around the ship, which basically ends up, because of their powers, wreaking havoc on the ship. So what do they have to do? We have to beam these two guys back down to Sharon. Now, this is where Steve Shives also tripped me out, because he says they was going well and he felt that they didn't stick the landing on this episode, right? Because it shows the futility of it. But again, he's looking at it as individuals. These systems, the polar opposites of these systems, were so strong, right? So hell-bent on one trying to be free, rightfully so, and the other one just doing everything in its power, right, to oppress them, making laws, once they got out of slavery, making laws, making them fight wars, experimenting on them, doing all kinds of stuff, psychological warfare. Does any of this sound familiar, COINTELPRO? So now, we beam these two systems off our planet back to their world where these systems originated. All right. And what, after 50,000 years of these systems clashing and not being able to reconcile, what do you think would be the logical outcome from people who always want to be free, right? And people who never want them to be free. No matter what, they never want them to be free. No matter how much these people march, no matter how many times these people protest, no matter how many bodies pile up, no matter how many lynchings, no matter how many man missing kids, no matter how many separated families, no matter how many ICE agents running up in people's jobs and all this kind, no matter what the Constitution says, no matter none of that, we will seek to oppress those who do not look like us simply because they do not look like us. And that is a powerful system, and it has been allowed to propagate. And as a result, just like they show in that episode, if there's not a compromise, it will be Sharon. Anyway, that was my perspective of why I think Star Trek truly hit the mark when it came to talking about racism in the original series and in the show as a whole. They've always been really good at discussing racism, except for that one episode with Tasha Yar fighting the African people on that planet, the next generation. Let's not talk about that.